You don't get to speak over me. You had your stage, now you're going to listen. Do you think this ends with Padilla? Do you think you're sending a message? Because I've got one for you. Try jailing me next if you have the guts. The room was tense even before Kristi Noem entered. The arrest of Senator Alex Padilla had taken center stage across the nation. His crime? Standing with immigrants during a peaceful demonstration. A protest meant to draw attention to a humanitarian crisis at the border and the intensifying criminalization of migration. It was an arrest that many viewed as not just unnecessary, but intentional, a tactic designed to suppress dissent and intimidate those who dared to oppose state power. It wasn't a random action. It was strategic, calculated, and when Governor Noem stepped up to speak about it, she wasn't just stepping into a room, she was walking straight into a firestorm. Jasmine Crockett, always sharp, always poised, and never one to sit quietly while injustice unfolded, was seated across from Noem with her usual intensity. Her silence was powerful. Her eyes told a story of someone who had seen this playbook too many times before, someone who knew exactly where this speech was going before the first word was uttered. Noem began in the same way many public officials do when caught in controversy, with polished language, a somber tone, and a rehearsed narrative meant to soothe rather than challenge. She painted Padilla's arrest as a matter of public safety, a necessary enforcement of law, and even went so far as to say that Padilla's actions put lives at risk. But Crockett was having none of it. Interrupting with a voice full of fire and conviction, Crockett didn't wait for Noem to finish her spin. "Let's be clear," she said, leaning forward, every syllable wrapped in razor-sharp resolve. "The only thing that was at risk was your political comfort. You couldn't stand someone calling out your policies, so you slapped cuffs on him and called it justice." The impact was immediate. A collective breath seemed to be held in the room. Reporters looked at each other, phones were raised. Noem's jaw tightened, her fingers visibly clenching the sides of her podium. Noem tried to respond, claiming that her actions were guided by a need to uphold the rule of law, but Crockett pushed back harder, refusing to let her hide behind vague rhetoric. "Spare us the law and order script," she shot back. "You arrested a sitting senator for standing on the right side of history. If law and order means targeting peaceful protesters while ignoring the cries of children locked in cages, then maybe your laws are the problem." It wasn't just what Crockett said, it was how she said it. She wasn't angry for show. Her voice didn't shake. She spoke like someone who had seen the harm caused by silence and who had vowed never to be silent again. And then, in the moment that would soon go viral across every major platform, she stood up, looked directly at Noem, and said the words that would shake America: "Try jailing me next if you have the guts." The room fell silent. It wasn't just a mic drop, it was a political explosion. Noem's reaction was telling. She stared at Crockett with a glare that was supposed to intimidate, but Crockett didn't blink. Her calm defiance made the governor's fury look weak in comparison. Noem stumbled through the rest of her statement, her voice uneven, her argument falling apart. She tried to cite state laws, but Crockett immediately countered, citing the First Amendment and the fundamental right to peaceful assembly. "This is still America, isn't it?" Crockett asked sarcastically. "Or is it your personal kingdom now?" The standoff was brutal. Noem attempted to pivot the conversation, suggesting Crockett was being divisive, but Crockett was quick with a devastating reply. "Divisive? You arrested a Latino senator for standing with migrants. You divided the country the moment you turned civil disobedience into a crime. Don't blame me for highlighting what you did, blame yourself for doing it." It was a lesson in rhetoric and courage, a live demonstration of what it means to call out power in real time. As the conversation continued, Crockett brought receipts. She quoted Padilla's decades of public service. She read from transcripts of the protest that proved it was peaceful. She even cited Noem's past statements about freedom and constitutional rights and showed how hypocritical they sounded in the context of this arrest. "You can't wave the Constitution one day and tear it up the next just because someone made you uncomfortable," she added. The governor had no response. She was exposed, cornered, and humiliated in front of the very crowd she thought she could manipulate. What made this moment even more resonant was how it echoed far beyond the immediate incident. Crockett wasn't just standing up for Padilla. She was standing up for every protester labeled a threat, every immigrant vilified for seeking safety, every senator or activist silenced for daring to speak truth to power. Her words reverberated through social media, talk shows, political forums, and dinner tables. They weren't just comments, they were declarations. Meanwhile, Noem's office scrambled behind the scenes. Reporters later revealed that her aides were furiously drafting press releases to regain control of the narrative. But it was too late. Crockett's words had already broken through the noise. "Try jailing me next if you have the guts," became a rallying cry. Protest signs featured her quote. Memes flooded the internet. Even celebrities and political leaders began echoing her stance. Senator Padilla, upon being released, tweeted one sentence: "Jasmine Crockett, thank you for reminding America what courage looks like." The response to that tweet alone was overwhelming. Thousands of replies, Tens of thousands of retweets, and hundreds of thousands of likes showed that the public was not only watching, but standing with Crockett and Padilla against what many called a rising tide of authoritarianism. The days following the incident only amplified its significance. News outlets dissected every second of the exchange. Editorials called Crockett a force of reckoning. Activists credited her with reigniting momentum for immigration reform. Meanwhile, Governor Noem's approval ratings took a noticeable hit, especially among moderate voters who had previously considered her a level-headed conservative. The confrontation exposed not just her actions, but the values behind them. Behind closed doors, Crockett was asked whether she regretted the intensity of her words. Her answer was simple: no regrets. I spoke the truth, and I'll do it again tomorrow. That level of unapologetic conviction is rare in modern politics, where cautious language and centrist platitudes often dominate the discourse. But Crockett represents a new era, a breed of leadership that doesn't back down, doesn't play it safe, and doesn't compromise on justice. This moment wasn't an accident. It was years in the making. Years of witnessing immigrant families torn apart, peaceful protesters arrested, and lawmakers weaponizing law enforcement to crush dissent. Years of watching political elites smile for the cameras while trampling on the very people they claim to serve. Jasmine Crockett had seen enough, and when the time came to speak up, she did more than speak, she roared. There's something profoundly American about that moment, not the sanitized version of America often shown in textbooks, but the real America, messy, loud, defiant, and constantly demanding better. Crockett's confrontation with Noem didn't just expose one injustice, it reminded the nation of its unfinished fight for equality, dignity, and accountability. And it reminded those in power that their actions won't go unchallenged, not anymore. Even as some in the political establishment tried to downplay the confrontation, calling it heated rhetoric or unbecoming, everyday Americans saw it for what it was: resistance. It was the kind of pushback that doesn't come with a pre-approved script. It was raw, emotional, honest, and in a time when many politicians speak only in sound bites and safe answers, Crockett's candor cut through like a lightning strike. Youth groups, student leaders, and grassroots organizations began referencing the moment in rallies and speeches. They held teach-ins with the video clip. In classrooms, civic discussions began to revolve around what it means to challenge authority in the name of moral right. Crockett's moment became a case study in how one voice, unfiltered and unafraid, can galvanize the public consciousness. Noem, for her part, tried to recover. She went on conservative news shows to reframe the situation. She blamed liberal hysteria and claimed that the protest had been manipulated by outside agitators. But her words rang hollow. Too many people had seen the footage. Too many people had heard Crockett's voice pierce through the political fog. And too many people were tired of being gaslit by power. Political analysts began speculating on what this meant for Crockett's future. Some whispered that she was being groomed for a leadership role far beyond her current position. Others said she had become the conscience of the new Democratic movement, less concerned with party politics and more concerned with unflinching truth. Whatever the future holds, there's no denying that her presence now casts a long shadow. The symbolism of her standing tall while Noem withered under scrutiny wasn't lost on anyone. It wasn't just a clash of opinions, it was a confrontation between two very different visions of America, one that seeks control through fear, and one that seeks justice through fearless honesty. And in that battle, Crockett's voice didn't just win the room, it won the hearts of millions. Those who had felt ignored, marginalized, silenced, immigrants, activists, dissenters, found validation in her words. For them, this wasn't just a viral moment, it was a statement of worth. It was a declaration that their struggles weren't invisible, that someone in power actually saw them, understood them, and was willing to risk backlash to defend them. And still, Crockett did not take a victory lap. She went back to work. She continued meeting with advocacy groups. She followed up on Padilla's case. She didn't just talk about justice, she pursued it with grit. Her actions spoke just as loudly as her words, proving that this wasn't performance, it was purpose. Noem, in contrast, found herself increasingly isolated. Some Republican lawmakers privately questioned her handling of the situation. Others feared that her attempt to criminalize dissent had backfired so catastrophically that it might jeopardize broader legislative goals. What was meant to be a display of strength turned into a spectacle of weakness. In the weeks that followed, a bill was proposed to reaffirm the rights of peaceful protesters. Spurred in part by the national uproar, Crockett supported it wholeheartedly. She stood before Congress, again invoking Padilla's name and the countless unnamed protesters who faced intimidation. She reminded the chamber that history judges silence harshly, and that this moment demanded clarity, not cowardice. The echoes of that confrontation still linger, not because of a single sentence, but because of what it represented. It was a mirror held up to the nation, forcing a long overdue reckoning with how we treat dissent, how we criminalize compassion, and how we allow fear to drive policy. And as long as Jasmine Crockett has a voice, It's clear she'll continue to use it like a thunderclap, rattling cages, breaking silences, and reminding everyone watching that power only trembles when confronted by fearless truth. If you believe in standing up for truth, for justice, and for those who refuse to stay silent, then hit that like button, subscribe for more powerful breakdowns of moments like these, and share this video to remind everyone, courage speaks louder than fear. Stay bold, stay aware, and stay with us.